Princess Bride is probably one of my most favorite movies of its genre. I adore this film. And I remember the first time I watched it, and I was at work, my summer job, and there was a lot of downtime in my summer job sometimes, and the TV would be going on in the background, and it was on pay-per-view, and they just keep showing this show, and I probably watched it, I don't know, maybe a dozen times the entire summer. And I was like, I could just keep watching it so many times. I couldn't believe how many times I watched it, considering how stupid I thought it might have been when I saw the trailers. Because the trailers really did make it look stupid, and nobody wanted to go see it. Turned out that was a big mistake, and it was a great film after all. Um, so, but as I got older, I began to realize that there was more to it than just this great adventure and great imagery and you know great comedy for a film by Rob Reiner, who was known for his ability to make us laugh. William Goldman, who was the author of the book and who also wrote the script, had a plan, and he set out a plan. I think from his own experience about women and life and the customs that he was aware of, and fairy tales and the things he'd researched. And there's a guiding principle in The Princess Bride, and it's sort of laid out throughout the entire story from one stage to the next. And that's 7 ways the Princess Bride helps you get the girl. William Goldman actually, his daughters were telling him to write a story. One, he had two of them, and one said a princess, and the other one said a bride. So I guess that's what better way to do it. And there's no doubt, I've asked women all over the place, and everyone I've ever talked to enjoys this movie, likes this movie, thinks it's great, has fondness for it. So on with my analysis. And what you see in the beginning is, the opening act, the first scene with Buttercup and Wesley, and he's the farm help and everything. This is everyday life. And this is what we expect, and this is normal. It's the second act that turns into the mystical and the fantasy and the mythology and the lessons learned. And a lot of it, I think, is sort of a reenactment and an expansion of the first act. This is where you get the whole, it's a dream within a dream and a story within a story. And it could be about like what's going on inside of us when we're in a relationship. So you see, you happen to work with this girl or you go to school with her or something like that, and all these things, all these emotions are going on, and you're the Dread Pirate Robert, and you're facing these challenges of, what does this girl think, and you can't just come out and say you love her, but it's going on inside your head, and it's true because I think the numbers speak for themselves. Something like well over 50% of people either meet at like work or school or some place that they're, forced to be together. So I don't know what that is. It probably tells us that, to me, it tells me that people do not know how to meet other people as easily as they would like. So they just sort of conveniently date the person next to them. That's kind of what I'm thinking. But all the same, nature sort of does it to us. I also think that. And we could probably fall in love with anybody. Now, skipping ahead to where they're climbing the cliffs of insanity, which you'll find in the Great of Ireland, I believe. I forget what the actual name is. Just fantastic scenery and a great little story here. I think this is like the preamble to the second act. This sort of puts it all together. And this is why you see the princess, Vincini, and Indigo all harnessed to Fezzik, the giant, who is, a symbol climbing up to the top of this ridge, top of this mountain, I guess. Well, and it lays out what's going to come. The next 4 stages, really. Then you have, they finally get to the top. Wesley makes it to the top. Interestingly enough, with the help of the artist, the master, the swordsman. And then the great duel ensues. Now this is, if I was to psychoanalyze this and to break it down and to speak of it as mythological terms, the lesson here is mastery. That the advice William Goldman is giving to the reader, the watcher, the young guy that's trying to initiate into manhood is mastery. He needs to master something. Whatever it is, it could be a language, instrument, a career, vocation, languages, some skill he needs to really master and understand what mastery is. Not just to master something, but to understand what mastery is. This is what combines him to the real world. This is what puts him with the world. He can understand the real world, whether, the ability to build a house or the ability to farm land. Something that can be improved upon. And something that could be handed down perhaps to his children later on. Another skill set. The artistry also, it helps create style and technique in a sense that, he knows how to dress and he knows how to present himself. And of course, this is why he doesn't kill Indigo, the swordsman. He doesn't need to kill. This is part of the alter ego. This is what he needs later on. And I think that the fact that the artist had, offered to help Wesley to the top, the swordsman, was that it was foreshadowing later events, but it's also the very thing that's in you that helps you really get to the top, is this mastery. So, master something, even if it's to be an electrician or, a structural engineer, an architect. A lot of guys I know took up instruments to really impress women. Sometimes you can make money at it and you can create a career from it. Other times it's just kind of a great hobby, but it's always a great skill. It's a better skill than watching TV or just being someone who has watched a lot of television. So think about that. It could be athletics. It doesn't mean that you have to do something you don't like. I mean, the study of football. There's greatness in that. It's more than just a game on the surface. There's a ton of strategy, and for those who play it, there's the real world of football right there. I mean, I think a lot of politics, is the same sort of strategy, you know, as football. You could even argue that it could be very Machiavellian, or what people think Machiavellian psychology is. They're always trying to get more yards, more downs, and then the touchdown eventually. Same with hockey, tennis, whatever, and you can learn other things from it. Moving on to the giant. Now, what I like about this is that it's very simple, and it's interesting that there's a moral play there, where Fezzik said, I don't have to kill you. I could have just, or I didn't. I could have hit you if I wanted to. I could have killed you right here and now. So there's like, skill against skill alone. This ingenuity, this mano a mano, and this is, in a lot of sense, the thing it makes me think of is, your problems. Your problems are always bigger than you, or the goal itself is always bigger than you. Climbing the cliffs of insanity is always bigger than you. It's just like it's just gigantic. Like when you first buy a house, it could be the thought of it, the mortgage is bigger than you. Or when you first take up something like karate in your white belt, it's bigger than you to get. It's so much bigger than you to get to a black belt, and you really just have to. You have to overcome this, but you need that internal. It's not just the mastery, the artist, but you need that strength, that internal strength, as well as the strength to take on, your environment, and the strength to keep going. It's a very simple sort of scene, but I think it was necessary. And of course, and this is my favorite, one of my favorite scenes in the entire film, and it really lays it out. The next one with Vicini. I call this is intellect, and I think what you need to do is, really educate yourself about the world as well, not just mastering a craft or a skill, but just learning all kinds of things about the world, learning strategy and knowledge-based philosophy, religion, whatever. And this is why I think they brought up Plato and Socrates, because the first stage is master of the mind, body, and soul, right? So the artist is mastery of the soul, and this is why the spirit scene comes up later on for Indigo. And then the body is obviously you're mastering your strength, your discipline, your determination, your desire as well. This is the body. And then the intellect is, putting it all together, learning about the world, learning about geography, or, basically all the psychobabble that Vicini spit out, even though he was kind of a retard in the end, and he sort of was trying to pull stupid juvenile tactics to win the little event. He wasn't fooling anybody. And really, if you look at him, he looks like a court jester. He is dressed like a court jester, like a fool, like an absolute fool. And that's why he got side-blinded or blindsided. And, he didn't know which cup it was in, but, the strategy is to put it in both cups. And I bet I bet the Dread Pirate Roberts has pulled that little scheme a few times. And he developed tolerance. Now, when you think about it, I mean, Vicini is all these things. He's arrogant, he's foolish, he's, abusive, and he's a liar and a cheat and all these other things. And this is why Vicini dies. Because this is the ego, this is the part of the ego that needs to die. And this is why they both drank the poison. Because I kind of see all these characters as alter egos of the main character, of Wesley. Even the Dread Pirate Roberts is kind of an alter ego. And this is like the dragon. This is like the famous dragon tales where the dragon, whisks the princess away. And like, what is a dragon going to do with a princess? I mean, what possible, use would a dragon have for a princess? Well, this is the point. This is the initiation into manhood. This is the maturing of the boy. The dragon is his alter ego. The princess is his alter ego. And, to make himself, to groom himself into manhood, into maturity, he has to slay the dragon, slay that evil part of himself, so that he can save the princess. This is why this princess can never save herself. Because it's not about necessarily saving the princess from the dragon. It's really about bringing a man into mature adulthood so that he's able to be with the princess or girl of his choice. This is the judgment, because what woman would want to date a man who, isn't at some level of maturity, some level of competence. He has strength or intellect, or he's mastered a skill, he's an artist of some sort. So, and those things in Vicini has to die. I mean, you want to kill him. You want to kill that abusive nature in yourself. You want to destroy it and stomp it out of you. Your ignorance, your buffoonery, you need to get rid of it by educating yourself, knowing what 2 plus 2 equals, knowing where Spain is on the map, knowing that, how to plant seeds in the world, in which kind of soil, etc. Yeah, women find all this quite sexy. A lot of women are incredibly attracted to intelligence, and they really, in general, I think, like intelligence, even on whatever level that it is. It'll excite them, even if it's not your particular style. There are a variety of styles. There's not just, because you're an engineer, it's an intellect. So he defeats Vicini and moves on. And this is a great scene. This is the revelation scene. This is the scene that opens everyone's eyes, because it was interesting that the princess was wearing a blindfold when Wesley showed up, and then he takes the blindfold off and she sees him, and he still has this mask on. And I think the mask itself is the denial of who he was, as well as I think it was he still hasn't discovered who he was. So you have the denial of the individual who's developing mastery in intellect and strength, but you also have the growth where he hasn't chosen who he is, and he begins to choose. And in so choosing things that he likes and dislikes, he chooses that he likes Buttercup. And I'd like to give a shout out to Robin Wright, who was able to play the straight man the entire film with the name Buttercup as her character. You know, also like to give a shout out to Andre the Giant, who I was lucky enough to have high-fived while I was in my childhood days while he was still alive. He was quite a awesome individual. So she discovers, "You're the Dread Pirate Roberts." "With pride," he says. And then she, it says he could die a slow death and all this. But eventually they find themselves on the ridge, and she pushes him down the hill, and he tumbles, and as he tumbles, he's shouting, "As you wish," which she realizes that, it's actually Wesley. Now, this is why I kind of say that the second act is sort of a reenactment of the first act in mythological terms. And kind of what happens here is she realizes that, she opens her eyes to Wesley first and foremost after she realizes the mask comes off and she realizes that he loves her. It's that very same scene, and at the same time it's and then she goes tumbling after him, which means she had fallen in love with him as well, quite literally falling after him. And then they're off to the fire swamp. And the fire swamp is, at the same time, it's giving all kinds of information about identity and the importance of identity and what you need to know about identity and who you are. Your reputation is important, because as a man, your reputation will always precede you. So you need to make sure that whatever it is that your reputation is, or what you want your reputation to be, you will always want it to precede you, right? And you want the right reputation to precede you at the same time. So, quite often every action is accounted for in this. And this is probably Judgment Day in a lot of ways, but whoever you are will always speak for itself. And you think, how you treat one little person doesn't matter, but it does matter. Every person, every little creature, maybe even really every little flower, but let's just say for now the provable point is that every person you interact with will speak with other people. And I've been in advertising for years, and the number one thing they will tell you that is word of mouth advertising is the most important advertising. It's better than billboards, it's better than television commercials, it's better than flyers in the mail, it's better than direct marketing, it's better than anything. Word of mouth advertising is paramount. And this is what you want. You want people to know who you are, and you want them to know the right person who you are as much as you can wherever you go. Now, do with that what you will. But, if you shortchange people, word gets around that you shortchange people. If you're a coward, it gets around that you're a coward. If you're a thief, it gets around that you're a thief. All these things are incredibly important. So keep that in mind. Identity comes up again later with Indigo, and he's this is where the artist and identity sort of connect on that level, where he's, looking to his father in the spirit world, in the next world, for guidance to find the man in black, which is really to find himself. That's what we're talking about. So you need to know that sometimes you can go to a higher power, whatever you want to call it, or even go to your inner self, or reflect on what you are, if you need to pray or if you need to meditate, whatever it is. But you can take time to really focus on your situation, and sometimes answers will come to you if you ask, in a way that you may not expect it. It's probably important to believe this. So they make it through the fire swamp, like I said, which is the preamble to the next act. With the fire spurts and the lightning sand and the ROUSs. So he gets out, and here's the moment, the greatest line I think in the entire movie, and maybe one of the greatest lines in the top 10 of great lines, I think, is, "We are men of action. Lies do not become us." And it was so well said, and it's kind of a hokey line, but it's just so awesome that I want it on my gravestone, because if anything, you want to be a man of action. It's just so awesome. Which is kind of even particularly funny, because the next part doesn't take action at all. It takes the opposite, really, which is patience, which is waiting, constantly waiting. And if you don't have the patience, and this is, this whole sort of like next little bit is, patience somehow is put out there, whether Humperdinck is saying to Buttercup that she needs more patience, or the torture machine, which was just fantastic. So he's tied up, he's completely restrained, which is really exactly what patience is like. And he's got the suction pumps, and he puts it to one, and and Count Rugen says, "I have just sucked 1 year of your life away." And when you're really trying to get the girl, that particular girl, sometimes patience is really the key factor. It's very important, especially if she doesn't know that you love her or have feelings for her, and she hasn't thought about the idea of even being with you beforehand. She may need to warm up to the idea of being in love with you, to even have thought of the idea of being in love with you. It may take a while. This is why Wesley falls down the hill first, then Buttercup falls down the hill. He's sort of he's led with this. And this is not nature. This is the emotions. This is the higher power of relationships making this happen. This is from the heart, which makes it really different. And the heart takes time, but it lasts longer, and it's more stronger. There's a greater loyalty, and there's more rewards with it. Is there anything else on patience? Well, the next stage is bravery. Oh, patient. Oh, yes, the one part about Mad Max. He says, and I can't forget this. You know, Russian Miracle. You rush a miracle, you get rotten miracles. you gotta add that. I can't forget that. Bravery. Bravery is so fantastic, and you know, there's so much going on with it. And sure, you know, they could stand up to 60 men at the gate, 50 men, 60 men at the gate, and they have their little plan when they really have nothing going for them. They have like very little limited assets. I really love another line Bill Crystal said, and he said, "Bye bye, boys. Have fun storming the castle." It's just, you know, to me. I mean, if I'm psychoanalyzing it, and I see everything on a different layer, and by analogy, the princess is the castle, and none of these things really exist, like the Prince Humperdinck. You know, this is not really the hidden lesson. The hidden lesson is he's defeating himself, he's overcoming himself, and he's storming the castle. He's gone through all the steps. He's the master artsman. He's got strength. He's got a certain level of intelligence. He now knows who he is. Now that he knows who he is, he's made his choice. And now he's got the patience that he's waited for. And what is he waiting for? He's waiting for his moment. And here comes his moment. You know, the princess is in love and she's waiting for him, and she knows he's coming for her. So now the only thing that's required is bravery. The bravery to move forward. And you'd be surprised at how many men are terrified of women, which is completely ironic. But there it is. Men are shy. Men are afraid to be rejected. They're in general just, you know, confused about the whole thing. So they won't even take the risk to fail. And what I've learned is, in most cases, if you do it straight up, is that you're better off making an attempt and being rejected rather than not making an attempt and harboring these feelings for eternity. So you know, at some point, you want to express yourself. And, you know, now, there's two different things I'm talking about here. Simply hitting on a girl is one thing. So you see a pretty girl and you want to talk to her, you just go do it. And if she says, "Get away from me, creep," whatever, you're embarrassed. But really, I mean, you will feel better for having done it rather than not having done it at all. And the only thing you really need to work on is your approach. And she may have to work on her manners. But nonetheless, most people are receptive and they'll talk to you and whatever. And you can learn very quickly by reading a person whether they're interested in you or not interested in you. So that's okay. And if you learn that they're not interested in you, then again, you have to go back to the drawing board and learn your approach. Some women are married. Some women have been crushing on another guy for the last 6 months. So it wouldn't matter if you're, you know, the best looking model, actor, superstar on the silver screen. she's going to be crushing on that guy and she's going to be loyal to that guy. And being a rock star or having all the money in the world won't help you. And that's okay. You should respect that. That's kind of interesting. And, you know, more than interesting, but, admirable. And we should maybe even think about that. But sometimes you can, if you're, smooth and suave enough, you could get her to think about you instead of him. I mean, if it's not working out with him, maybe she hadn't realized that she's open to a new relationship. So again, a lot of it's your approach. As for the other thing, when you've been working it out for a couple months with a girl, it's, you're at the next stage. You're already beyond that, and it's the bravery is not so much just making your first move and introducing yourself, but it's, her testing you on the next step. Because she might be thinking the long game after this, especially traditionally. It's not as common anymore because marriage is sort of, disintegrating, but nonetheless, women are still conditioned to do it, and they're, people argue against evolutionary psychology, but even if it's not that, it's something, and it's still in there. So she'll be testing men to make sure it, and you can't blame them. I mean, even from their position, they want to make sure they're with the right guy and that the guy that they're with loves them. You'll probably won't recognize your own tests, but you'll certainly probably test her as well. So, anyways, be aware of it. So we get to the scene with Humperdinck, and really Wesley has nothing. He's completely wiped of any of his strength or ability or capacity to even stand, almost, right? So I think this is kind of like, he's really endured the test. He's really gone through it. He's really been put through the ringer. And in the spiritual sense, I think this is it, because during this period you have Indigo, telling Count Rugen who he is over and over again, and trying to kill, prepare to die. And this is really, this is kind of, this is very godlike. This is sort of what I consider the spirituality of the whole thing, where, if you consider it on one end, you're becoming born again through the Spirit, and this is why you're dying of the old way and giving birth to the new way. You're awakening that Spirit, and once you've done that, now you're in reaches of the bride. So he's in the wedding chambers in this particular scene, and he's bluffing. And there's a whole thing going on here. I could probably even add another section to this. And it could be, maybe it is, maybe I did with thoughtfulness, and I was really thinking intuition, but I wanted the two to be separate. And that is, sure, he's got the guts and the tenacity to, and you need that. I mean, to really, when you're bluffing someone, you need a lot of courage to do it, because you're really gambling it all on, the one thing. And that's why bluffing takes courage, and you need to, put on a good act. But prince suspected that he was bluffing the whole time. He he knew it inside. He knew he was bluffing, but he cowered. He dropped his sword, and it's interesting that he got he was put in, he was tied up, he was restrained, he was in restraints after that. And that's kind of what happens when you fail to act courageously, when you fail to act with bravery. You are in fact in restraints. You've put yourself in restraints. So if you fail to say hello to that girl you like, you're lacking courage and you're in restraints. You fail to ask the girl to marry you, that you want to marry you, then it's because you're in restraints, because you're afraid of the answer. And most people, I think, are afraid of the rejection and the feeling of rejection and the feeling of ridicule from everyone else, and stuff like this. But there is a thing to be afraid of in regards to success, because with success sometimes comes more stress, more responsibility, more and whatever it is that the success will bring, you are actually afraid of it, even though you deep down you want it, but there's something about the element of that success that you're afraid of. You have to figure that out and conquer it as quickly as you can. So you might be afraid of, you think this girl is too beautiful for you, or just even being with someone when you're used to being alone most of the time, and you're afraid of, you don't want to be alone anymore, but you're afraid to be with someone because it's sort of created an issue with you. So you don't know how to act with people, and you're afraid of that success. Some people are afraid of financial success because they come from poverty, and their mind can't adjust to financial success because they can't identify with it. They don't believe that is their identity. You need to overcome that quickly and get used to it and learn how to maintain these things. So I assume the same thing can happen to a person who's a bachelor. They're used to being a bachelor for so long that they're actually afraid of the responsibility that comes with being a husband. Well, don't be afraid. It'll take a little bit of effort. It's really, and usually a lot less than what people think. And sometimes if you're open and honest about your fears, then the other person can work with you. And this brings me to the last and final way, and that is thoughtfulness. This is where the giant Fezzik brings around the 4 horses, and he has this little, I found 4 white horses, and I thought, if we find the girl, she'll need one. And then they're all like, yeah, you did good, this is great. And this is interesting that it was strength, because it takes strength and endurance to do all this thoughtfulness. So it wasn't just like they didn't know what else to do with Fezzik, in the last couple scenes, or, that particular scene is incredibly important. Thoughtfulness is very important. It's an important part of the stages. You need to, and this is kind of goes along with intuition, but on its own, thoughtfulness is, being one step ahead of, her needs, the girl's needs, as a couple. This is the glue that helps keep it together. She needs, if you're out and she needs a toothbrush, you get her the toothbrush, without her asking if possible. And, sometimes, sure, you can buy women, you know, golden earrings or diamond earrings or necklace or whatever, and they'll like this bling. But sometimes there's this other thing that if you could figure out about them, and it could be that music box that her grandmother gave to her when she was a child, and you were able to get it fixed and playing again and cleaned up. That's this sort of little miracle that, she realizes that's what makes you special. And I'm sure there's all kinds of other things, like, perhaps it's that coffee in the morning. I've spoken to girls about this on numerous occasions, and some of them, they say it's the little things. And for us, it's like it kind of, it's like holding the door, opening the door for a woman, like a car door and stuff. It sort of became cliche, which kind of ruined it. But the lesson there is you open the door when they need it, right? Or when they're not expecting it, or, when you're trying to woo them. You're really seducing them. They still, I don't want to use the word fall for it, because you're not tricking them in a sense, but you are selling them. You're selling them yourself. And you want to make it a part of you, and you want them to return the favor. I mean, really, that's a lot what it's about. I've heard it described like this. It's not just, 50-50, but it's 100-100. Where you're both putting 100% into the relationship. And you're bonded together. You're bound together by your own desires. This is where some of the greatest wealth and happiness can come from. I've never seen women so miserable and unhappy in my whole life. I mean, this generation is just, it's propelling. Even if you go back, 30 years ago when they said men were nothing but animals, women were happier back then than they are now. They certainly do not. I mean, they have perhaps more things, and maybe they have better careers, whatever. But I mean, everybody has better careers now because the opportunities were there that weren't there before. So it's just, I just see a lot of unhappy people all around. But there is a lot of happiness, and maybe I should look for that as well, more so myself. And I think that the Princess Bride really had the highest ambitions, and I think it's one of those movies, those films that you can, 10 years from now buy for family members to give to their daughter or whoever, and like the whole family can watch it. And I think it'll even get bigger as it goes along. I think it'll reach even higher respectability in the next 10 to 20 years as it storms along. I think people are going to start to discover how great it really was, and I think a lot of people already have as well. So I'm glad you listened to this and enjoyed it, and I look forward to your